You're listening to the Happier Marriage Podcast, and this is episode number 7. What we'll be discussing on this episode is the 5 common problems that hinder couples from having a happier marriage. Which ones are you guilty of? As you listen to this episode, listen to see if any of these 5 common problems hits close to home for you. And if you were to choose the top one that you are guilty of, which one would that be? Also, make sure you bookmark this podcast as your top resource for insights on having a happier marriage. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Kingsley Grant, a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified relationship coach, and an in-demand speaker who have been married for over 3 decades with 2 adult children. I'm also the founder and CEO of Helping Families Improve, a counseling center that caters to helping families experience the life God intended for them to have. So how do we have a happier marriage where love, respect, and deep connection takes place? That's what you'll find out as you listen to the Happier Marriage Podcast. What's up, ladies and gentlemen of Happier Marriage community? I hope you're ready for another round of the Happier Marriage Podcast. This episode, you may have heard me say this before, but I think it's worth repeating, that this episode might trigger you because it hits close to home. But that is one of the purpose of this show, to stir things up and then to take you in for a safe landing. So buckle up and here we go. Now, as you heard the title about 5 common problems that hinder couples, I want to make sure I say this up front, that this is not an exhaustive list. Having worked with couples for so many years, I kind of begin to see a pattern of what the presenting issues that these couples who come to me are having. And the top of the list of all the problems I hear, I would say 90% or a bit more are around communication. Now, I must say that is what they may start off with, but then it kind of delves into other areas as well. But when I look at the application, the form that all my couples fill out or state about what it is they want to work through, almost always is checked off as communication. We just don't communicate as we should. Our communication is just non-existent. So it's always something around communication that they start, almost always. And then they, again, I mentioned, go into other areas. So obviously, when I say 5 common problems, the number 1 that I have in this order, now the rest may not, number 2 through 5 could be in any order, but I put the communication issues as number 1, communication issues. Here's my question to you. If there's any problem or any hurdle that's hindering you from being in a happier marriage relationship, would you say communication would be on the top, and would it be the top thing you'd have chosen? If you didn't choose that, I would want to applaud you and commend you for being one of the rare exceptions, because I believe that communication is one of the main things that every other thing that you experience, if you have effective communication skills, I believe it can address the other problems you're having. And you'll hear me mention 4 other problems that I have listed and will share with you today. But I think that as you listen, the main thread, the common denominator, I believe that is missing from all these other areas is this one, communication. Now, some people or couples will say to me, or one of the couples, right, the spouse may say, no, I'm a good communicator. And I'll ask a question, which I do because I don't take it that I understand what they mean by saying communication is our main issue. I'm acting from a place of, okay, tell me more. what does that mean to you? Because every couple, every relationship would define communication a bit different, right? So I would say that what they're experiencing is ineffective communication. And maybe there are a number of things that one person is doing and the other is not. And so that creates an ineffective way of communication. But it's a broad word. It's a big word, right? Not just in letters, but it's a very broad word. Because if you had to drill down and be more specific, if I was to ask you if that was one of your hurdles, what does that mean when you say that communication issues is one of our major issues? What does that mean? And when I listen to couples, they will have, a number of things. We just don't see eye to eye, as an example. Or they may say, he's over here and I'm over here. We just seem to can't agree on things. Or I may hear that he or she just doesn't listen. Or I may hear that I don't feel heard in our relationship. Or I may hear that what I have to say is not important. And the list goes on and on. I don't know if I've touched on anything that you would say or your spouse would say. But that is what I find many times people mean by we are having communication problems. And I don't in any way dismiss or see that as insignificant. I think it's very significant to the relationship because, again, it's what it means for the couple. And every relationship, right? Every relationship should be judged on the merits of the people who are making up that relationship because every one of us have different backgrounds. We're coming out of different family of origin. And so we have been taught different ways and styles of communication. So it can be a very complicated issue. And that's why I believe it's so important to get professional help to help you to sort through that web of communication that you might be experiencing, right? It's not a simple thing. And I'm not saying that, I don't think you see it as simple either, but it's something that needs to be negotiated. And sometimes you need outside help. That's why one of the things I want to mention right up front is that between August 22nd to August 26th of 2022, if that date have not come and passed when you're listening to this episode, you have an opportunity to join me in a 5-day, I call it a 5-day reveal. It's Happier Marriage Secrets 5-day reveal, where I will unlock what I believe is the most effective communication skill that will help you to have a happier marriage. And I will share that in those days. And if you are interested in that, you will see the link in the show notes, but you can go to KingsleyGrant.com/HMS. H as happier, M as marriage, and S as secret. So Kingsley Grant, KingsleyGrant.com/HMS and reserve your spot, right? It's a limited seating. So, of course, a limited seating on the internet, but you know what I mean. I'm only going to accept so many people in this first time around. And so you need to reserve your seat if there's space still available, because this is one of those areas I'll also address about communication and create a lens through which couples can look and possibly interpret what they're experiencing and question whether or not they're really and truly communicating. So that's one thing. The first thing I want to mention here on top of the list is the 5 common problems that hinder couples and maybe you from having a happier marriage. I think it's communication issues. Secondly, the second one I have here, now these others may not be in the order that primarily you might be experiencing, but listen carefully and see if there's any of these that also resonate with you. Second one I have here on my list is spending, saving, and credit cards. You could say financial issues, right? I cannot tell you how many couples, well, you probably have heard this before, that majority of divorces have taken place around financial matters, right? Have you heard that? Would you in some way agree with that statement? Because if you've had any kind of financial challenges or disagreements, complication or fights, you may have gotten close to calling it quits because you could not resolve the financial issue, right? You may not have gone that far, but it could possibly end up there. Because money, the use of money, spending, saving, credit cards, and sometimes what I find in couples, one person tends to be more of the spender and the other tend to be the more of a saver. So you have two opposites. People are looking at the financial situation of their lives, their marriage, their home, and one is concerned because here is what happens. Both of you have what I call, and you may have heard this before, is your relationship with money. We all have relationship issues with money. Money means different things to different people, especially if you're from a family or a background where you didn't have enough or have much growing up. And so you have a different kind of relationship with money. And maybe scarcity is one of those relationships. Maybe a fear of not having enough, right? Maybe it's the idea of somehow we can live on credit cards, whatever it is. So we'll find that people will begin to use words as you're so irresponsible. I just don't know what's going on. I don't even know what balances we have or finances, or you have your account, I have my account, and on it goes, right? There's something to be said about that. I've addressed that to some degree in a previous episode where I talk about the idea of this going into a relationship and marriage where both parties, both spouses, tend to have separate accounts. And I really haven't, I know there's in some situation where that might be, and I use this word sparingly and carefully because I don't necessarily 100% advocate for that. But anyway, where some couples may have to have some arrangement where an account is set aside for some reason. And I find many times it happens in second and third marriages where you're coming in with a certain kind of situation where finances have to be tied up in other situations. And I get it. And there might be some arrangements that may have to be made. So I call those the exceptions. But when you have different approaches to spending and saving and credit cards, because of your different relationship with money, that is where the problem comes in, because you're both not seeing and have being on the same page. One person is worried, and for them, having money around, cash around, and so on is a security issue, right? They feel secure when money is in the bank, when they don't have any overhead debts, and so it's all is what creates a problem. So this is one of the common problems that hinder couples from having happier marriages, because how can you have a happy marriage when you're not seeing eye to eye on finances? When you have disagreement and you're two on the polar opposites when it comes to your money, right? That is a big issue in relationships. Number 3, wanting to be right or to win. I don't know if that's true of your relationship, but I have worked with so many couples where at the end of the day, what I find, and the spouse may not say that, one of the spouse may not use its words, but in essence, they want to be right. They want to win. They feel like the only way they trust that you're listening to them is if you give in and admit and agree with them. So agreement means listening, right? Now, I don't come from a school or advocate that kind of script or narrative, because I don't have to agree with you to have listened to you. As a matter of fact, because I listened to you, that's the reason why I'm not in agreement with you, right? So sometimes not being in agreement is truly listening. And it should be okay if that happens. And of course, there's ways to negotiate that and talk about and communicate that. And you can see why even the first, spending, saving, and credit cards, and now wanting to be right, all is around communication. Do you see the common thread so far? And the last two, which I mentioned, you will see also that communication is also the common denominator or common thread that runs through the fabric of these hindrances to a happier marriage. So wanting to be right, and here's what I tell couples. When you want to be right, guess what? You're setting up a situation where somebody has to be wrong. So it's a right-wrong kind of situation you've created. And so if you are right, then your spouse is wrong. And who wants to be wrong, right? Now, I know we can admit, if we are mature enough, we can admit we are wrong. As a matter of fact, if we are people of faith, like I am, we even more so should admit when we're wrong, because we do make mistakes. All of us does. But sometimes pride gets in the way. We don't want to admit we're wrong because we feel if we admit we're wrong, it's weakness. If we're from a culture that making being wrong something that feels weak, you are going to have a hard time giving that up, right? But when you want to be right or to win, means somebody has to be wrong or someone has to lose. And here's what I tell couples many times. If you are right and the other person feels wrong, then guess what? They're going to see you as wrong. So now who is right? Now you may want to have to replay that to hear that, but I say it another way. If you win, then your spouse loses. And if he or she loses, they see you as a loser as well. So who has truly won? Now, again, you may have to replay that to really catch that. But that's the third problem that hinder couples from having a happier marriage. Number 4, letting go of the past. Letting go of the past. That is not an easy thing for people, especially when you've been deeply wounded or hurt. Letting go is not easy. We've heard many times, and I'm saying this very carefully, and please understand the spirit behind which I'm saying which I'm about to say, because I in no way mean disrespect or irreverence, but I think I have to say it because I hear it so often. We'll hear the phrase, let go and let God. Now, there is truth in that. There is a reason behind that. But sometimes the way it's used is not the right time to have used that statement. Let go of the past, they'll say, and let God, which is what we need to do. But we have to frame that in a proper context. We have to, number 1, have a true relationship with God where we truly know Him and understand why we can let God and let go. But in general, letting go of the past is not just something you wake up one day and do. Is it possible? Yes. Have some people done that? Yes. And maybe you have been one of those people. But it's not easy, right? It's not easy. It's a simple thing to do, but it's not an easy thing to do. We can tell people to let go of the past until we have to let go of the past. But my friend, it's necessary. We have to find a way to learn how to let go of the past. But the only way to do that is through forgiveness. We have to create a case that we can use to forgive whoever has offended us for us to want to let go of what has happened in the past. Like I mentioned, that's one of the problems that hinders intimacy, closeness, deep connection. Because how can you be connected with someone in a deep way when there's a past offense or issue that gets in the way? It's very, very difficult. But that's one of the problems I find in couples that hinders you from having a happier marriage. Now, is it possible? Yes. All these things I'm mentioning, there's a way to rectify, remedy them, and make them better. And that is something that, of course, I can't cover everything on this episode. I just want to highlight these 5 things and to ask you to see, where are you coming short? Where are you on this list? Don't think of where is your spouse. You. Look in the mirror and say, is any one of these things, are you guilty of them? And so first was communication issues. Number 2, financial issues, spending, saving, and credit cards. Number 3, wanting to be right or to win. Number 4, letting go of the past. And number 5, setting healthy boundaries. Now, this is a big one. It covers so many things, different areas. It covers family relationships, in-law relationships, friendships on both sides. It covers children relationship with parents. And you could go on and on, but how do you set healthy boundaries? And I find that when couples cannot set healthy boundaries for their relationship, for the marriage, for important things that they need to do to sow into the marriage or make deposits into the marriage, then it's not going to be a happier one. Because what happened when you have no boundary in place, it becomes like anything and anyone comes and go as they please. And so there's constant disruption. It's hard to plan things. It's hard to even depend on your spouse when you're uncertain if he or she is going to hold to a boundary that you have both agreed upon, right? It's very difficult. So healthy boundaries is very important. I work with so many couples And sometimes I hear couples say, Kingsley, I just don't even know how to set a boundary. And I find sometimes when I set a boundary, I end up being the one who breaks that. I end up being the one who violate the boundary that I have set. And because I just don't know how to hold to that boundary. Because to hold to that boundary means something, right? It's going to come at a price. It's going to come at a price. It's going to cost you something to hold onto the boundary that you have set. But setting healthy boundaries for your marriage is critically important. And so many couples don't know how to set healthy boundaries. And because of that, it gets in the way of them having a deeper connection, feeling supported, feeling as if their marriage is a priority, and on it goes. So here are the 5 things as I list them as we're coming to the end of this episode. Number 1, communication issues. Number 2, financial issues, spending, saving, and credit cards. Number 3, wanting to be right or to win. Number 4, letting go of the past. Number 5, setting healthy boundaries. So which of these 5 common problems that hinder couples from having a happier marriage, which ones are you guilty of? Let's start with 1. Is there one? I would love to hear from you. Let me know. And this is really, it's not just to put anybody out there. Just say, hey, if I had to choose one, I would choose this one, right? I would encourage you to do that, right? Secondly, you may want to share this list with your spouse if they're not listening to this podcast, and ask them, tell me which one of these I am. Ask them to say, which one of these would you say I'm guilty of? And then you have the right to also say, can I say the one that I think you're guilty of? And possibly get some help on that, right? I want to encourage you to get some help on that because I think it's important that you do that. So my friend, as we come to a landing here, remember this. Even though this all are true, even though you might be guilty of one or more, remember, it's not too late. It's not too difficult. It's not too late to actually make some changes. With the help of God, through prayer, through better communication, through outside help, you can turn this around, my friend. Remember, all things are possible with God. And if your heart desires that, then you'll make it happen. So my prayer is for you and yours, your home, your family, that God would give you the grace and the wisdom, that God would give you the insight and the strength, that God would give you the courage to tackle any and all of these problems that's in the way of a happier marriage, and that He would give you the insights of how to go about making the changes. So may God bless you, be gracious to you. May His face shine upon you. May He give you His peace and His grace, and may your house know happier marriage, but also a happy home. With that said, my friend, may God bless you. Peace out. God bless. And I'll see you on the flip side. Yeah.